start. I'm so excited. We have it's a big night in comedy. Let's just say that for the therapy of the absurd. We have a big night in comedy. We have and I know that she comes in a great legacy of the great Stan Lathan, who was creator of Def Jam. But we are about to introduce to some and share with others about Rikki Hughes. So tell me when we have the slideshow ready.
We got it up now. Go for it, Steph.
All right, putting it up.
Woohoo! So you guys, just a little bit about Rikki Hughes. Woo! So Rikki Hughes, you guys, is a Emmy award winning and three-time Grammy winning comedy producer. Now, most people, I think, may know her in this huge way because of her work with the very obvious Dave Chappelle. And I can personally say that when Netflix first started doing comedy specials, they were only doing comedy specials with a couple of marquee folks. And Dave Chappelle was kind of one of the first leading the train when, and then Netflix is a joke. And now it's this great home for comedy. But behind every great talent is a great producer. And so let me just say this about Rikki. So since 2018, Rikki has won an Emmy Award and 3 Grammy Awards and has been nominated for 2 NAACP Image Awards, producing Dave Chappelle. And everybody on here has seen all of these specials: The Age of Spin and Deep in the Heart of Texas, Equanimity, The Bird Revelation, and Sticks and Stones. And this year, she and Dave are nominated for a total of 7 of my fingers are up Emmys, which include the last special, which include the Mark Twain Prize, which includes so many things. And so we're just excited about having her on. I have a quick question. Does the slide have any more pictures? I put a couple of things on there.
Oh, yeah. Here she is with couple of those Grammys.
Hi. So you guys, to all of our folks that are in here, we put up all of the networks because she also is the showrunner for Hood Adjacent on Comedy Central.
Oh, yeah.
Produced BET Awards and co-produced BET Awards. Recently, you guys, which we're gonna talk about all of it. She is the showrunner producer for the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air 30th reunion on HBO Max. Woo! And most of all, her baby, she is founder of Magic Lemonade, a film, television, and management company in Hollywood. So you guys, welcome to the broadcast, Miss Rikki Hughes. Woo!
Oh, well, we had a few other things. There's the Magic Lemonade. Okay, that's the end of it. Yes, go ahead.
That was the last one. Woo!
I'm sorry.
Welcome, Rikki. Thank you.
Hey, Rikki.
Hi, everyone. How are you?
Fantastic.
Hi.
Fantastic. So, I guess the question always becomes, which came first, the chicken or the egg? We know that you started in the music business, but when did you make the shift over into, and I also didn't say this, but you guys, Rikki is producers for film festivals, American Black Film Festivals. There's so much on the resume, comedy festivals, and we just kind of tried to hit the high points. But when did you shift from working and touring in the music business, Priority Records, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Over to I guess maybe your first TV gig or your first live show?
Yeah. So it was, 2000, 2001, I left Priority and I started producing and I never looked back.
Wow. Who was the first call you got? What was the first call you got to produce?
The first show I did was a show called Dance 360, and it was with Fredro Starr and Kel Mitchell.
Okay.
And we shot it for Fox. We shot 65 episodes, and I did it with Ralph Farquhar and Carl Craig.
Okay.
And then I was also doing some work with Def Comedy with Stan Lathan.
Okay.
And that was my entry into production.
Wow. One thing I noticed about your resume is that there is a depth to the work you've done in comedy. Was that intentional? Was it because of allying with Stan Lathan and Carl? Carl is so fantastic. We need to have Carl on the broadcast as well at some point. Was it because of the work with, kind of known comedy producers? And I big up Carl Craig, worked with the Wayans brothers, produced for them. So, he's no slouch either. But was it intentional to kind of get into comedy producing?
Not really. It was, for me, it was my entry point. But I had an interesting story. My sorority sister, we were just graduated from college and before going to grad school, and Her name is Robin Latiker Johnson now. She actually runs development for OWN, but for BET and Sci-Fi and a bunch of other places. But at the time, we had just graduated, and I remember seeing in the Hollywood Reporter, there was a company that said Hat to the Back Productions, and it was Ralph Farquhar and Claude and Claude had started a company.
Mhm.
And we were calling. I said, Robin, I said, I'm going to work with these guys at some point. And she's like, really? I was like, I don't know what it is, but something's going to happen. So then I later got a call from Carl. We had been trying to figure something out because I had great relationships with talents, and we were going to figure out what we were going to do. And then he said, you still producing? I was like, yeah. He's like, well, come meet me here. And he sent me the address. He said, it's 5555 Melrose. And I looked up, and I was at Paramount Pictures, and I was like, this is where I said I was going to do something at Paramount Pictures. And I said I want to work something with these two guys. So I drive through the Paramount gates. I get there, and as soon as I pull up, I see a sign that said Hat to the Back, and it was Ralph Farquhar and Clark Brooks there. And I was like, I had no idea. It was just someone that I saw in the trades, and I was like, I'm going to work with these people. And Carl was the one who just brought me in. He's like, hey guys, this is Rikki. She's a producer. And that was it. I started producing. I better get my game up.
Wow.
Nice stuff.
Love it.
Oh yeah. Congrats, man.
So you're moving along as a producer because you're also getting ready to produce the Trumpet Awards, but like it's like that's such an amazing story of having a vision and then the vision coming to pass. But like then it just kind of spirals, right? Because now you're working with Stan Lathan. Like how did you just like did you know a lot about producing comedy? Is there a difference in producing comedy over producing anything else?
No, I was just willing to be of service, and which is what I always tell young people who say they want to be a producer. I say, if you want to be a producer, produce, like, do it, and I did my research. I, figured out what I needed to know, got there and said, I'm willing to be of service. Like, what do I need to do to make this happen? And so right now, like, I didn't have really the same opportunities that kids have now, because now if you have an iPhone, you can shoot, you can edit, you can create your content, you can immediately put it up. You can't tell me right now that there's any barriers or ceilings that's keeping you from getting your content to your audience, for you to create, for you to put your reel together, for you to find someone next to you who will hold the sound mic, where you can borrow, you can do it on your phone and at least get your proof of concept out. So the second thing I always tell people who say they want to be a producer is I say, hey, who are your favorite producers? What are your favorite TV shows? No one will pass that free labor. If you go and say, hey, Steven Spielberg is my favorite and I want to volunteer, and you hang around his company and you say, look, I'll work for free. I'll be a PA for free. I just want to go get coffee, whatever I need to do to be in the mix. They're gonna, as long as you aren't crazy, they're gonna say, come on.
Right. And like, that was kind of the next question. Like, what do you think? There's been so much change in technology. Like, what has that meant for your role as you've moved from one level to the next? Like, the command of technology and those changes, what has that meant for your work as a producer?
Well, I stay in it. I came up through physical production. So for me, before I started on the creative side, I had to know the nuts and bolts. So I could tell you every camera, every audio piece of equipment, every board that was run. And I would go on off days and make sure that every time they had a demo, if I wanted to use a camera, I would go to the camera house and make them demo every camera until I figured out the look that I wanted. So, but that's part of just knowing your craft and being a part of it.
Wow. So you're producing comedy. Did you know Dave Chappelle as a producer before you got the call to start working and collaborating with him? Or was there just this point where that's the phone call you got?
Well, I worked with Dave when we did our last season of Def Comedy. He came in, Stan had just called and said, hey, Rikki, Dave's coming. And I went out and grabbed him. He came by himself. He just pulled up in the car and he was like, I don't know if you're going to want to run tape on any of the stuff I have to say, but someone showed up. We got him on stage, and that was the first time he really told the whole story about when he took a break and stepped away, and we just had a great relationship. So when he decided to make his return to the stage, of course he called Stan. Stan and I actually happened to be in the middle of doing all deaf comedy for HBO at the time, and so we went in and sat down. The crew was very small. There was only 4 of us really that produced the entire show. Stan directed, I produced it. I brought in my assistant, who I made her a coordinator, and my PA, who I made who I moved up to production management, because it had to be very intimate and secret. And we put together the amazing show that you guys now see, The Age of Spin, which is where our first Grammy came from.
Wow.
Very nice.
Wow. One of the things that I shared with the audience is just like, for me watching you guys, what you did was extraordinarily monumental, but it kind of ushered in this age of comedy for Netflix. There hadn't been, up to that point, they weren't known as Netflix as a joke. They weren't known that way. And so did that for you kind of further expand your opportunities, or as a producer, did kind of widen your name even more in the world?
I don't know if that's true. I have the awards, and sometimes they're paperweights and sometimes they aren't. I can't say that it really opened doors. I feel like I still had to step in. It might get you a meeting, but you still have to close that deal. And then also, all of my awards were with Dave and Stan. So, I'm sure there's a question like, can you do it outside of with them? So, that's something I had to step up to the plate with.
Yeah, I had a very wise friend that once told me that every day you have to prove that you earned what you earned. And so you go out there, everything that you have with you, you got to go, well, I guess I got to go get, earn that again, even though I already have it. And it's, as long as you keep that in mind, it keeps you going.
I think the difference for me is I worry about proving it to myself. I really, I'm self-referred on most things. So, I'm less concerned about how someone else thinks, and I'm concerned and probably my harshest critic of myself. So it's a constant battle.
Wow. But I mean, I know you hear, but your work is amazing, and it certainly is meaningful to women everywhere, because you are the first African-American woman to win an Emmy for Outstanding Variety Special, pre-recorded. Like, that hadn't happened before you got that award. And now in 5 or 10 or 15 years, there are now, there will be at that time so many women who know that can be done because of the award you won. And I know it's not like we all have control, and it's not like you step in, but did you launch Magic Lemonade before your work with Dave, or kind of at the same time? Tell us about Magic Lemonade.
2014, I started Magic Lemonade. I already have my own production company, which is Completely 3. And 2014, I was in the middle of doing a bunch of shows for BET. I worked with John Cossette previously before he passed, and was one of the only Black women and showrunners that actually worked with him. And after he passed, and then I helped Jesse Collins build his company, and then I decided to hang out my own shingle and do projects the way I wanted them to be done.
Wow.
Speaking of Magic Lemonade, I'll have some.
Every time you say Magic Lemonade, you guys got to take a drink.
Oh, yeah. Let's start that now. Go for it.
I got water.
Where's my drink?
I got water. So, interestingly enough, one of the things that was exciting and that I kind of saw happening was that you signed Emmanuel Hudson. And and I want to dial back for everybody that's in here. There's a few. I see some of my friends. I want to acknowledge everybody in the chat. Thank you guys for in the comments. Thank you everybody who's watching and asking questions. I want to say I should get a shout out to my friend Tiffany Jameson, who is the first time to the broadcast. But just so everybody knows, John Cossette, producer of Grammys. Yes, Rikki, I don't want to get that wrong. Grammys. And Jesse Collins, producer of the
BET Awards. I mean, John started out. John's father, Pierre Cossette, he created the Grammys. And so John came up through physical production, and he had the Grammy years. And, to John's credit, John did BET Awards. And at that point, it was the Comedy Awards. And, he did a lot of the shows. And, a lot of his, white counterparts were like, why are you doing those black shows? Like, they didn't get it. But John got it. He understood. He always made sure that we were there, we were present, we were front and center. He understood if you're taking all this money from BET, you better, have some representation there. And, I always give it up to him. He also was the kind of producer who knew everyone on set. Like, he knew, from the PAs to the gaffers, he didn't just walk in as, the head of the company. Like, he really gave a damn. And, I definitely learned a lot from and working with John.
Rikki, I have to ask you, and this is outside the questions that we had planned out for you, but with everything going on, do you think 2020 is a big year in reference to representing people of color so far? Do you think we have a chance, and what we can do with our voice now that it's a little louder with everything going on? What is your perspective in reference to it?
I don't, to all respect to, the lives that we lost to COVID. And I know it's been tough for a lot of people. But 2020 has been an amazing year for me. I have to be honest. It's been a growing year. It's been a time where, especially for Black women, there are a lot of doors that are open. I think it's important that once we get those doors open, that we kick them open, that we create some damn good projects while we get in there. So when the door does close, you're already inside and you've already figured out how to really, let people know that you're there for keeps, and not just and not because someone cracked the door open, but because you kicked it open and did some great work while you're inside.
Wow.
I love that. Yeah.
Thank you for that word, because it's been Tabitha Brown, who's actress, said something very powerful on Instagram. And the other night she was talking about her mom and her mom's death to Lou Gehrig's disease. But she said, God trusted us with 2020. And so whether you believe in, God by that name or anything, we've been trusted with still an opportunity and a block of time in which to do great things. I was excited, though, just shifting a little bit to Emmanuel Hudson. I know you've had him on your roster for a while, but I just want to tell you a funny story. Like, my son is a teenager, and I still remember the day he came in and he's like, watch these guys. So he showed us on YouTube, Emmanuel and Lantbo, doing their YouTube stuff. And then the next thing, and they were hypnotic, absolutely hilarious, like polished and ready. Like, I think, and honestly, I feel like those two amongst, other influencers of the time, they were like part influencer, full on comedy people, like creating a space coming from, like, they weren't coming from TV. They weren't in this system. How did you get turned on to Emmanuel Hudson? And then what made you sign him to Magic Lemonade?
Well, I worked when the guys were in a troupe, even back in the Vine days. I lived in Atlanta, and when I saw them, I knew that there was something really special about them. I had, these two young Black kids in Atlanta who had the sensibilities and the, comedy chops of The Office. And, you don't really have, those kind of worlds coming together. And I always felt like it was special. At that point, it was Emmanuel, it was DC Young Fly, it was, like all those guys were, all worked with to help them transition to, move to the mainstream, but on their own terms. So for all of them, it's been, for me, a real special journey. And I feel proud of those guys. and I believe in them, and in a place where, a lot of times Hollywood, at that point in time, Hollywood really wanted us to go get influencers and put them on the show and think that their 4 million or 5 million followers are going to start watching the show. Well, no, that's not how it works. So what happened is you would take them as a fish out of water and put them into a whole nother medium and then be upset when they didn't succeed. So I just stopped. So I started bringing people to Atlanta. So I brought Carl, I brought Stan, I brought my agent at the time. I said, you guys come into their world. And I realized then where my kids were watching, they didn't care about the $300 a month cable I was paying for. What they would watch is on their iPad and on their phone. And for them, that's what reality TV was the social media influencers. But what we thought was reality TV for them was scripted, because they're like, Mom, they walked in, they already had a mic on. When they opened the door, they had, so I started to realize that, oh, I got to bring Hollywood to you guys as opposed to trying to fit these guys into the mold. And so what we did there was something really phenomenal, because even if you look at like what's happened with 85 South, with DC and Carlos and Chico, even that was about, when we first got out there, Hollywood wasn't checking for us. They didn't get it. They didn't care. They're like, I don't get this podcast. I don't get these guys. I don't get, they didn't get any of it. It was like, okay, bet, we got you. So, they're the point of, their own authentic audience. The fans are rabid. Once we started selling out all over theaters, and they were like, wait, hold on, Rikki, the guys, remember the guys you were talking about? I was like, no, it's on our own terms now. We don't need you for distribution. We don't need you to book tours. We don't need an agent. We don't need a manager. Like, we're doing it. And when we show up, all of the fans show up. They stand outside. We don't have an opening act. Walk in. They stay all the way until we tell them that we're done. And because the show is never the same, because it's not a routine, it's not a stick, that if we came back to the same city the next week, they would come again, because it's always a different show.
Wow.
Nice.
So that authentic,
Rikki, are you still doing this with TikTok? Because you mentioned Vine, and Vine was actually discontinued a couple of years ago for our viewers. But are you still doing this in reference to TikTok? Are you still scouting people?
Well, I mean, I'm always looking for, a new, fresh voice and a great POV. My guys are more on Instagram and, more than even TikTok. Most of them aren't really TikTokers, because they're good now moving into, like, they're all doing stand-up comedy, and, they're kind of moving into a little bit of a different space. Not that they're anti-TikTok, but their major platforms,
Right.
Twitter and Instagram.
Now, we did have a question from someone in our audience, Anthony Vera, and I wonder if you know about this. He was going to ask, what would you say about going about doing good sound design for shows? When you produce, have you been part of the sound setup for these shows as well?
I do everything from top to bottom.
Awesome.
From the first idea, the concept of the show, all the way till we deliver it to whatever platform we're on or network. So I hire every single person, that's on the crew.
Wow.
And when you do something like the, and I'm going to have to remind myself, the Def Comedy Jam, Healing Through Laughter, can you tell people, when it comes to sound, how many microphones you have going on throughout the area?
Well, actually, Royale, we did that together. Well, it depended on different points in time. Most of that was done over Zoom.
Okay.
We did that.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Well, because that's the one we did with Royale. That was Healing Through Laughter with Cedric the Entertainer. But and actually he worked on Def Comedy with me too.
Yep.
All Def Digital, All Def Comedy. Yeah, that's what it's called. HBO show. Royale worked on that with us as well. And with that one, that's different because we had a live audience. So with that show, Mike Abbott is my sound engineer for that. And we had a cajillion mics, because we believe in miking the audience. We don't use cam ever. We always use authentic laughs from the audience. And if you don't get the joke, if you don't get the laughs as a comic, we're not going to give it to you in post.
Mm.
we earn those laughs, because we're kind of comedy purists around here.
Nice. Yeah, he was wondering that, and I've also wondered that too. Like, just to pick up the performer themselves. You see a microphone here, but there's probably other microphones around
Absolutely.
the air.
There are mics on the stage. Like I said, we mic the audience. It's funny when we got ready to do The Age of Spin. I remember at sound check, Dave came out and he walked down the stage. He said, "Just my audio?" We're like, "Yeah." He's like, "It sounds amazing." And that was Mike Abbott, and we've been working with Mike. He's done every single one of our shows. In fact, he was just nominated for an Emmy as well for audio engineer.
Okay.
Very nice.
Now, in reference to your relationship with Burrell, it always begs to differ. Do you relationships in this industry, like, do you have to make a big impression in order to build relationships in order for future projects? Like, it sounds like you guys have known each other for quite some time. Is it best to build relationships in some way?
I mean, I think always, but to me, I don't care about making a great impression. I care about being authentic, and I think that makes the impression that, like, I've known Royale for many years. I knew Royale when he was doing stand up early on. But hey, I'm consider myself good people and I'm around good people. And when you find people that are part of your tribe, I just keep them close.